1 week from today marks the 75th anniversary of the deadliest nightclub fire in history at the Cocoanut Grove Nightclub in Boston's Bay Village. On November 28, 1942, a fire began in the basement lounge and tore through the building, packed well over capacity with well over 1,000 people inside. As patrons ran for the doors, they found 6 of the 9 exits were locked. In the end, 492 people were killed, and in a new documentary, some of the survivors recount their stories.
I was lucky that somehow someone upstairs was guiding me to that door, but being pulled out of that door and seeing those bodies piled high, I can still see them.
The film is called 6 Locked Doors. I'm joined now by the filmmaker, Zachary Graves-Miller. Zach, thanks for being here. Congratulations. Former Boston Mayor Ray Flynn, who dedicated the lone plaque that actually memorialized those who died. Mr. Mayor, it's good to see you, too.
Good to see you, Jim.
I'm guessing you were born about 40 years maybe after this happened. What's the interest? Why do you care about this?
So I grew up in Bay Village.
Oh, you did?
I grew up in Bay Village at 17 Winchester Street, and I had always walked past that empty parking lot, and I saw the plaque and in the ground. And, you know, I had an interest in it, but I didn't really know about it until the 71st anniversary at the street renaming.
You know, you have not just a professional connection, obviously, we'll talk about that in a minute, as the former mayor. You have a personal connection through your mother. Your mother knew, from what I understand, a decent number of people who actually worked there, right?
Well, there were a lot of people from South Boston and Dorchester, throughout the city, that worked at the Cocoanut Grove. And, you know, so she knew a lot of the families. And I got to know many of the families as well. So it just wasn't a political issue. It was a personal family issue with many of us. And the other thing, Jim, is after my brothers and uncles served time in the military in combat, they came back to Boston and they became firefighters. And so that was always center on their mind, is how to change things so what happened at the Cocoanut Grove in 1942 would never happen again.
I want to talk about that's the most important takeaway, obviously, from this. But for people who don't have the context, there was no TV, there was no internet, there was no nothing, essentially. This was where you went to have fun. And the crowd from, not just that night, the most diverse from the most communities, rich, poor, young, old. I mean, it was essentially the whole spectrum of people out to have fun, was it not?
Yeah, you had a bunch of different people who would show up at the Cocoanut Grove. I mean, people from all over the state, all over, from everybody from Boston, Irish people, Italian people, Jewish people. I mean, it was a melting pot. You know,
the part I like most of this, I love hearing from the survivors. And one, is it hard to find them, or is there sort of a subculture of the remaining survivors who are almost waiting to talk, even if they're not conscious of it, if you know what I mean?
The survivors that I interviewed, I did a lot of research in finding out, because I wanted a first-hand accounts, because you think about it, 75 years ago, there's not a lot of people left. So, and 4 years ago when I started this film, there was only about, I think, 12, and now there's
really that few?
8 or 9 left. So, and I needed to get them their stories as soon as possible.
Now, I know you're not a shrink and you don't play one on TV, but the one survivor, that woman was great, who was 91 or something, but there's another guy you talk to who says, I'm over it. And this is where I ask you to play shrink. Is he over it, or is there survivor's guilt, or he just has to be over it because he doesn't want to deal with the horror of 500 people perishing in this thing? You know, what's your sense?
I think it's a little bit of both. You know, I mean, John, he hadn't talked about it in about 40 years or so, and Joyce, it was the first time she had talked about it in 60 years.
The woman's voice we just heard.
Yes, the woman's voice you just heard. And I think it's one of those things where they don't get an opportunity to talk about it, you know, or they don't want to remember. But in this case, I think it was special because they're getting interviewed.
You know what's amazing? I'm a transplant, which I know means I'm not really a Bostonian. I understand that, Mr. Mayor, but I try as best I can. When I learned years ago that the only memorial is a plaque that you dedicated, and then we had to live through that thing where the plaque is moved because some condo developer didn't want people to be depressed because they'll be, which to me is sick, but putting that aside, why, considering the importance of this in the history of the city, why is there not a larger tribute to these people?
That's why this movie is so very, very important, and I congratulate the committee who continued this educational movement. Jim, I think it has something to do with people don't want to revisit tragedy. They want to put it behind them. You know, that's the old Irish tradition in many respects. You know, let that be gone. You know, let's move forward.
Well, another Irish guy, Mayor Walsh, though, seems to be dedicated to,
he's
I don't know,
up
reliving
front.
it, but he wants there to be a serious tribute.
He does, and there should be a permanent memorial in that location for the
I agree completely.
for the memory of those families.
Can we spend a minute that we have left on what the mayor mentioned a minute ago? The most important takeaway from this is what happened as a result of it. Give me a short list of the reforms that happened in the hopes that this wouldn't happen again.
So revolving doors with auxiliary doors next to them opening out was a very important one. Auxiliary exit signs. We also have sprinkler systems, and you can add a few.
Flammable products in the window, on the ceiling.
Yes, non-combustible material.
Well, not just in public places, in people's clothes. Like one of the fire people there talked about how kids' non-flammable pajamas or whatever are in part of function.
See,
of this.
the inspections in the city at the time were not like they are today.
I understand that.
And you know, that's what this movie is bringing out, and that's what education is going to bring out.
Well, there's also, isn't there better medical care? I mean, people, you have
Yes.
Shriners in this, the better medical care as a result because they know how to deal with burn victims. But, you know, there was a high-rise fire in, what was it, London?
In London, yeah.
So did they not learn the lessons of the Cocoanut Grove or what?
Well, that's part of this film that I'm making is so people can watch the film and understand the lessons.
Rhode Island, the same thing that happened in Rhode
And
Island.
you look at the ghost ship
Right.
fire that happened in Oakland. It's the same things.
You know, we only have 30 seconds left. Why do people not know more about this? Everybody knows the words. They know Cocoanut Grove. They probably sort of know the... Why do we know so little about something so big?
Well, I think the film is going to have a big impact in terms of educating people about it. But don't forget, this was right at the height of World War II.
Right,
This is
42,
1942, and people had a lot on their minds. And so, you know, and then they didn't revisit it after that as they could have.
So it's revisit time now. Mr. Mayor, good to see you.
Good to see
He's
you,
in the
Jim.
film, by the way, I should say. Zach, congratulations.
Pleasure. Thanks
Lots
so
of luck
much.
with this. Really appreciate it. Six Locked Doors premieres this Saturday at 1 o'clock at the Revere Hotel, Liberty Hall. And you can find more information online at sixlockeddoors.com.